Mr. Ambassador, almost a week has passed since the ceasefire agreed between Israeli forces and Hamas. How is the situation now? What's going on now? And are there hopes that this time the peace will last longer?
Well, there is a ceasefire already 3 days and nights, to be honest. As you know, we didn't start this fighting. 4,000 rockets were sent at Israel from civilians' centers in Gaza towards Israel, aiming at civilians, trying to hurt civilians. So I think any normal country would retaliate. Think about someone shooting tens or hundreds of rockets at Tetovo or Prilep or Bitola or Ohrid, certainly on Skopje. The first day of the attacks were on Jerusalem, 7 rockets. So basically we didn't start it, but certainly we agreed to end it when we had those requests. We could have, of course, continued, but the idea was that, of course, we would like it to be quiet. And the moment they stop firing, there is no reason, basically, to fire. The sad thing, of course, is that Hamas is still there and is still holding refuge, a whole population of Palestinians. We, from the beginning, for many, many years, and we already signed agreements with the Palestinians, with the Palestinian Authority, there was ongoing negotiation, which they stopped, and we are always ready to continue negotiation with the Palestinians who are ready for our existence. The main problem in our region is that some of our neighbors are not ready to have Israel exist at all. Not just small Israel, not just part of Israel, not at all. That's the main problem. And until Hamas accepts this, you read their covenant, their document of existence. They say, kill Jews wherever, not even Jews in Israel. The 150 Jews of Macedonia are on their target as well. And I'm sure they know it.
What was the real trigger this time for those military attacks that lasted 11 days and took over 240 victims? It's not easy for the people further of that region to understand well the situation.
Again, as we look at it from the Israeli side, there was no reason to attack Israel. But the Palestinians use all kinds of Hamas, not all Palestinians, but the Hamas are using all kinds of excuses. Among others, they say that because of the fact that there is a big argument about some buildings in a neighborhood called Sheikh Jarrah in Jerusalem, which is going to go to court very soon. This was one of the reasons. The other reason, they say that we use force on the Temple Mountain, not far from Al-Aqsa, where the mosque is. And to be honest, we did use force there, but we used force because people were throwing stones. I think Israel is the only country in the region which make it possible for tens of thousands of Muslims to pray every day. By the way, 5 times a day if they wish, to do it on the mountain. We actually even not letting Jews come up the mountain and pray. We let them come in. This is the status quo that we have. But when you have tens of thousands of Muslims there, and suddenly only 1,000 are gathering stones and materials to throw at people and endanger their life, you have to use your police. And this is what we did. Of course, they made it look bad, unfortunately. And again, what can you do when you have tens of thousands of people running out, and only some of them, are throwing stones? I'm very happy for you, Biljana, that you don't have to deal with these kind of problems. It's not easy. And again, this is the kind of things that we have to tackle with. But for a long time, it was quiet. And then, again, in the last period, I think one of the really reasons is that there were supposed to be elections. The Palestinians were planning elections. And when Abbas, the head of the Palestinian Authority, saw that he's not going to win and the situation is not good, he decided to cancel it, also using an excuse that we are not letting him vote in Jerusalem. At the end of the day, Hamas was furious. They wanted to show that they're the strong part now among the Palestinians, not accepting Israel, and they started shooting. By the way, if you look back a year ago, when there was no clashes in Jerusalem, they also shot. For them, the goal is to destroy Israel. And all the means are good for that, are kosher, as we say in Hebrew. So they will try whatever they can. This time it was the excuse of Jerusalem. Other times it's other excuses. In those days, even during the times of the days of Ramadan, last days of Ramadan, 110,000 people in one day were praying. We made it possible. We are working very closely also with the Jordanian partners. Israel in the last years got new agreements, peace agreements with 4 Arab countries, additional Arab countries to Jordan and Egypt. And this is also upsetting the Palestinians. We are saying to them, come to the negotiation table, talk to us with no preconditions. We are ready for that. We are ready to continue other talks that we had. There's no one that is really interested there to talk. So I hope now, maybe after these 11 days, after there were a lot of casualties, again, Israel targeted not civilians, targeted military facilities. Some of them were not far from civilians. We also tried to avoid hurting them in many ways. But at the end of the day, if Hamas will become weaker now after this process, then maybe the Palestinian Authority will get back to the table. Maybe they will become stronger and will be able to talk to us. Blinken is here, right, from the United States, talking exactly about that. And we hope that the States and other allies will be able to push forward real negotiations with the Palestinians to get solutions for the region.
The world was divided in regarding the support for one or another side. Yesterday was Mr. Blinken there, and Americans promised help to Israeli government, but also promised help to people in Gaza to rebuild the cities and their homes. What in your how were these reactions from the Israeli allies first perceived by you and by the government in Israel, and later on I will ask about the reactions in the Balkan region?
Well, let's start, of course, with the closest allies of Israel. The United States gave full support to Israel in this process. There was a clear message coming from the United States that Israel not only has the right to defend itself, but also the obligation to do that. And we were in very, very close contacts, and they know how we operate, and I don't think that there were any problems in this respect. I would say more than this, just like the United States and Germany and Austria and so many other countries, which were very clear, saying 3 things, which were very important for us when we talk about the Balkans after. First of all, it was clear that Hamas is the aggressor, that Hamas has done terrible things, shooting from civilian population towards civilian population, which are 2 breaches of international law, crimes of law. So these are this is the first thing. And the second, the right of Israel to defend itself. All our allies said it this way or another. It was very, very clear. Of course, when there are casualties, everybody's worried. When you see little kids, it's hurting my heart to see little Palestinian kids in the situation in Gaza, and who's to blame? It's Hamas taking them, we call it as shields, as human shields. Okay, it's like cynically exploiting them. It's so sad. But again, you cannot not defend yourself because it's done. Of course, in certain cases, we don't even shoot. We have you can hear some records of our pilots saying, I'm stopping the mission because there are civilians there. But again, in some cases, if you hide in a school, if you hide near a mosque, if you put your terrorists there, if you put your terrorists in a building where also some press is working, we cannot leave it as it is. Because again, when you start this way, there's no end for it. So we did our best, but certainly there were some casualties. Talking about the partners, there was a lot of support. Anthony Blinken is right now in Israel speaking to all the leading figures. He will be speaking also to the Palestinians here, but the Palestinians, the relevant ones. That means those who are more moderate, those who are ready to speak with us. That is the Palestinian Authority. It's not Hamas. I'm not talking to Hamas, because Hamas is a terror organization. What would you talk to them about?
Can you tell us what is, in percentages, let's say, the support for Hamas by the Palestinian people? Can you describe it in percentages?
It's hard to say. As I said, there were no elections. Quite many people say that there are almost half of the Palestinians support them. I don't know. Again, you can see a lot of demonstrations of support in Hamas, which is, again, very sad. But I don't even know if they're not forced to go there. So again, Hamas is using such terrible means against their own people. So you cannot really believe anything they say. The numbers that they use. I don't know how many of the kids they mentioned that died are people who died from rockets who fell in their territories. According to their words, almost a third of their rockets fell in their territory. How many of the people casualties are from that? Who knows? We know of a few specific, but we don't know. So the question of how strong is Hamas is, again, something that it's hard to say, and it's changing. If they feel that they won this circle, many youngsters will feel, wow, we succeeded, small Hamas against Israel. But it's very sad. Each person that thinks like this, it's even sadder, because again, if we need to live in peace, and we hope that they're ready to live in peace in the future, they must come to the negotiation table. And as Hamas or Hezbollah and other terrorist organizations succeed to become stronger in this region, the chance we will have peace agreement is getting smaller and smaller. So what we need is to weaken Hamas. And we hope that now, one of the results will be that the international community, certainly the United States and others, will make sure that the money will not go directly to Hamas. Countries are ready to give money. Qatar is giving tens of millions every month. But if the money goes directly to Hamas, they don't help the people there. They build tunnels. They create more rockets to shoot at Israel.
Yes, it's true. This is not just a question or problem of the Israeli state, but it is international problem which lasts with decades. Mr. Ambassador, you are familiar with the events here in the Balkans and in Macedonia. What was your reaction after the protest? There were small protests, most of them mostly on religious background, supporting the Palestinian victims, the Palestinian people. What was your reaction?
Well, first of all, I'll tell you, there were two things. First of all, let's start from the beginning. The government of Macedonia, both SDSM and VMRO, government and opposition, made very clear statements, VMRO even more, saying clearly that they support Israel's right to defend itself and that Hamas is the aggressor and shooting rockets and so on and so forth. All that was there. And we got it from many others. Minister of Foreign Affairs, which is also from Albanian origin, as you know, Osmani, also made it very, very clear. And your Prime Minister said. But it's true that there was one or two small demonstrations which were very breaking my heart. Because again, this is the wrong message was sent there. Again, do I not care about the kids of the Palestinians? I care more than them, unfortunately, because they let Hamas stay there. So it's really sad. And it's sad also because we know who is behind it. We know that people are getting paid for that. We know a lot of the things which are really upsetting us. Support from Turkey as well. We know all that, but the most important thing I think that has to be said about it is that we saw on Twitter and in other places, especially, on the social media, we saw comments that should not come from Macedonia. People saying Hitler didn't finish his job. It is so sad. I was yesterday I was in one of the leading hospitals in the center of the country, where we treat Palestinian kids from Gaza. We operate them, heart surgery. I was there for kids from Kosovo, but I saw the kids from Gaza. During these times, we operate their kids to help them come back healthy to Gaza. And saying things like that, I'm telling you, breaking my heart, especially to see it from people from Albanian origin, according to the names, from Macedonia. Because I know that Albanians were those using the Besa that saved Jews during Second World War. So now having Albanians saying this, I'm telling you, breaking my heart. But I want to say, when you look at other countries where there's strong Muslim and Albanian population. There was a march for Israel in Kosovo. Leading figures of Kosovo will make it very clear where they stand. Albania was the first in the Balkans to come out with a clear declaration coming out from the foreign ministry, supporting Israel. So I'm really, really sad for the misinformation that came to some people. And I really, really hope that it will not return because, again, this is a slippery slope and it's very dangerous.
reading foreign media, there is another side of this very serious problem. The building of Jewish settlements as a policy of Israeli government. The Palestinians say that the policy is to build those new settlements exactly in between Palestinians or on so-called occupied territories. What is the purpose of this policy? What is the purpose of these settlements first?
Okay, let's start from the beginning. The beginning, Israel is building everywhere, just like according to what was agreed, just like others are building. But I think the most important thing is the questions where is building, and is this a justification for shooting rockets? Let's start with what is building. First of all, Israel does not see the territories as occupied. We see them in dispute, and we call them come to the negotiation table as they were before, because we had agreements with the Palestinians while Israel had these settlements. Israel started, in 1967, we were on the border of what we call the 4th of June 67. All the West Bank was not, we got all the West Bank fight in 67. We got all Gaza and Sinai. Today, back in Gaza and Sinai, we're not there at all. They're shooting from the places where we are not at all in where the line is. Israel took out 22 settlements from Gaza in order to protect the international line. We took out our own settlements. What did we get? Thousands of rockets. Maybe this was not the right thing to do, but this is a different question. But on the West Bank, there is a dispute. We have agreement with the Palestinians about certain things. There are certain things that we do not agree. Part of it is the questions where we can build and where we should not build. And this is part of the thing that should be resolved in negotiations. If you want to agree on a map with Israel, you have to sit and talk. This is what we started. You mentioned the Oslo Agreement. We sat with the Palestinians, we got to agreements. They're not fulfilling most of the things that they signed. So again, if there will be negotiation, I'm sure that the Palestinian side will bring the issue of settlement as one of the topics. But remember, for Hamas, Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, Haifa, everything, it's like if you want, it's for Hamas, if I make I look at Macedonia, for them, Shtip, Skopje, Bitola, and Ohrid are all theirs. So it's not like something that you can compromise. For them, everything is theirs. So settlements for them, for Hamas, Jerusalem and Tel Aviv are the same. It's all settlement. We are occupying everywhere. And of course we are not. We came back to our ancestors' home. And we are ready to work together for a compromise. But again,
what kind of compromise in such circumstances is possible? What is the prospect, Mr. Ambassador, of this long-standing problem? Is there still common ground for the Oslo Agreement, the two-state solution? Everything was on the negotiating table in the past. What could be a solution now?
Well, first of all, there are many solutions. But in order to get to any solution, you need both sides to be interested in a solution. What I'm saying that, first of all, on the Palestinian side, supporting Hamas means those who are not interested at all in the solution are becoming stronger. If we succeed to get them to the negotiation table, I think this is what the Americans are trying very hard to do, and I really hope that they will succeed. They will find in the Israeli side, like they always found, very big flexibility. Let me remind you, there were 5 or 6 suggestions coming from the Israeli side in the past by prime ministers. I'm not talking to you by, secret agents, by prime ministers offering in some cases 90%, in some even more, exchange of territories, many, many offers. Again, there's so much to talk about. But in order to talk in federation, confederation, there were so many ideas. But in order to get to the table, of course, we'll not do this negotiations, in Al-Zatem, so we like Al-Zatem. But still, negotiations has to be with the Palestinians, those who are ready and can deliver. Because if Abbas even say tomorrow, I'm ready to sit with you and talk, he has to show that he can deliver.
Can
I'm
you
afraid
see
that right now,
partners? Can you see partners on Palestinian side for compromise?
Right now, after this round, we'll have to wait and see. Before the round, it seems like they're going into extreme and there's no partner. I really hope that there will be a partner, but remember that at the time, those more moderate ones are trying to take Israel to the ICC, to the International Court, to fight us there. They are promoting today in the WHO, they promote a resolution against Israel about health, which is one of the places where, I wish for the Palestinians, I wish for the Syrians, that they would have the kind of health we are giving to the Palestinians and the Arabs in Israel and to those who live in the Golan Heights. But
hopefully,
again, it's politics.
Hopefully this process will start and we'll have a stronger,
we want it full-hearted.
Stronger
so
basis. Let's talk a little bit about the Israeli-Macedonian relationship, which usually is described as good, excellent, and etc. There is a small but very respected Jewish community in Macedonia. Unfortunately, it is much smaller than it was 80 years before. What are the ties, the strongest ties between our countries?
Well, first of all, I think we have very good ties with the government. We are in good contact with the opposition, but no doubt with the government, we have a very, very solid relations and good connections. And you have an embassy in Israel. We are waiting for your, hopefully soon, new ambassador to come. We have negotiations every year or two. We have a lot of projects going on. And right now, I think innovation and health are the two topics where we try to put a special emphasis. But we have people coming from Macedonia to train in Israel in different fields. Right now, when you cannot come, we do it with webinars. Some of the leading figures today in innovation in Macedonia are after they got in Israel some courses about innovation and how to create special things connected to innovation. We're hoping still this year to have a special delegation led by the Fund of Innovation coming to Israel to meet their partners and possible to see the experience here. So in many fields, I can see that there is ongoing partnership in education, teaching about Holocaust. We have partnership, wonderful partnership with Acta Verba, an organization which is headed by Iskender Hassani. We did many projects with them. You mentioned the little Jewish community, which were also some of them part of some of the amazing projects we did in Macedonia of cleaning already 4,000 tombstones of Jews in the old Jewish cemetery in Bitola. I hope we will be able to continue and finish all the 10,000, but not only clean it, but also to have it on possibility for researchers to learn about it. It's Jews that were deported in the times of the deportation of Jews from Spain, 1492 to 1497. And basically, our hope is to do much more in partnership. There are a lot of places with Jewish past. So there's a small Jewish community, but big Jewish past that we should tell together. This should be a center to extract tourists. We hope to have all that happening very soon, immediately after Corona will allow us. And I'm sure that there are many, many fields where we still didn't find how to do the partnership, and we will do it.
I'm sure that a lot of people would like to travel to Israel now, since the country was very successful and very quick in the campaign of vaccination of the population of Israel. Is it open for tourists, or this military conflict practically stopped these gates, closed these gates?
Well, unfortunately, it's not the military conflict that closed the gates, it's the Corona. Israel is right now in a wonderful situation. Of course, in the days of the conflict, nobody could come as well, but basically, Israel right now is closed for tourists, or almost closed for tourists, only very, very special cases. In general, that's the situation because Israel is almost totally immune. I think out of 8 million, almost 6 million people are first and second shots after. that means that we are in a very good position, but there is a fear of variants, we call them, coming from outside. We're very afraid that it will change the situation here. And we are waiting for the other countries to be in a better situation so we can already come and visit you, not causing any danger for you because we are vaccinated. But unfortunately, you can still not come visit us now. But I'm sure that soon, Biljana, this will change and we will be able to come and see Israel. It's an amazing country. Those from Macedonia who came can tell you, but what I can tell you also, we were before Corona about to start direct flights to Skopje, and we are working now to push it again. So as soon as Corona will let us to have direct flights, we had just as an example, in the year before Corona, we started direct flights from Albania. And we had 25,000 Israeli tourists coming to Albania. We already had flights to Ohrid from Israel in the summer, and we hope to have renewal of that as well. Hopefully, Ohrid will be signing also an agreement with the city of Givatayim from Israel as twin cities still this year. So good things are happening, and I hope many more to come.
Corona and the security situation will allow us.
I want to come back to see a wonderful country again.